Good morning, miss. So in yesterday's session, we discussed what are the types of performance testing, right? So we discussed what are the different types. Now today, let's discuss in detail about each of those performance test type. Right? And what is the importance of each test? We'll discuss we'll discuss each of these performance tests in detail, and what is the objective or what is the significance of each test, right? So any queries before we move to the next one? Yeah. Any queries before we move to the next one? Next slide, guys. Okay. So I'm taking your silence as no. Now, so let's see the different types of performance testing in detail and what is the significance of each test, right? So the first type of performance testing is load test. So load test is mandatory for every project. So this is the first this is the first performance testing you have to do, right? For any application, this is the first and foremost type of performance testing that should be performed. And as we discussed yesterday, it generally, when we are doing load test, right, we simulate the current user load on the system. Current user load or normal user load on the system. System means application here, right? Current user load on the system means on the application, whatever application we are testing, be it ICICIbank.com or HDFC Net Banking or any application, right? Or WhatsApp, right? Can we test WhatsApp also? Be it WhatsApp or Facebook, we can test this WhatsApp and Facebook also, right?
Yes, we do.
Right?
Yes, sir.
We have to do. Someone will be doing performance testing for that WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, these kind of applications as well, right? But load testing is something which we do with current user load or normal user load on the application, right? And load testing is usually done for 1 to 2 hours. Load testing is generally done for 1 to 2 hours. Based on the user load, we will go for either 1 hour or 1.5 hours or 2 hours. So I mentioned it as 1 to 2 hours. And what is the objective of doing load testing? It ensures that application is stable and can handle the expected peak load. The objective of this load testing is to make sure that the application can handle expected peak load. And it is a mandatory test that will be done prior to any other performance test type, right? So load test is a mandatory test that will be done prior to any other performance test type, right? So most of the projects, they will do only load test. Some, not most of the projects, some projects, I will say like some projects, they will do only load test. Okay. So in my current project also, before we, we got that project from some other organization, some other QA organization. So till we took it up, right? So they are doing only load testing. They are not doing any other type of testing. So once we got that project, so we started doing endurance test also. Okay, we'll discuss that. What is the why did we include endurance test and what is the objective of doing SOAK or endurance test? We'll discuss that. However, so load test is the mandatory test that will be done prior to any other performance test type, right? The next type of testing is SOAK or endurance test. So basically, endurance means long duration, which is durable, right? Or long duration, isn't it? Now, what is so when you say long duration, what is that duration? I don't know how is that duration decided is? It is decided based on the business hours of the application. Very important is remember this or note down if someone is taking running notes, right? SOAK test means long duration test, first of all. Depends on business hours of the application. Now that business hours can be 4 hours or 6 hours or 8 hours or 16 hours. It can be. So we'll get this. We can ask the client like, what is the business? What are the business hours of the application? How many? What is meant by business hours, guys? How many hours? Yeah, working hours. How many hours that application will be used mostly? Right? Most of the users, how many hours will they use? Right? So that is business hours of an application. So it can be 4 hours, it can be 8 hours or 16 hours or 1 day or 3 days. How come is this 1 day or 3 days? Or how come is this 16 hours? Can working hours be 16 hours? Or, what kind of applications will be used for 16 hours a day mostly?
E-commerce applications.
Right. E-commerce applications will be used 16 hours a day, right?
Yes.
They will not have, they will not have a fixed working hours like 8 hours, right? 10 to 5, 10 to 6, nothing like that, right? E-commerce applications will not have such, working hours like 10 to 6 or something. Yes or no, guys? So most of the users will be using throughout the day, isn't it? How many of you are using Amazon, guys? At what time you placed order, right? Do you remember at what time you place order generally? Or at what time you placed your last order?
By 10:30 p.m.
10:30 p.m. Yes, right. So those kind of applications will be used for 16 hours a day, right?
Yes.
Approximately 16 means not exactly 16, right? Approximately 16 hours, right? And how about this one day or 3 days? Which applications will have business hours for 1 or 3 days? One day. See, one day it can be 2 days or it can be 3 days also. Yeah. Can you give some examples?
So Flipkart, Amazon, Big Billion Days.
Big Billion Days.
Billion days.
Banking applications also.
Right. Some banking applications, right? Yes. Any more? Which application?
Healthcare.
Okay. Healthcare application. Give some well-known examples.
Flight, sir. Flight booking or some booking application.
Okay. Flight booking. Yes.
Grocery deliveries.
Okay.
WhatsApp.
Yeah. WhatsApp or Facebook. See,
Net
WhatsApp
banking.
or Facebook, it will be used continuously, right? So by the time you go to bed, like some people in some part of some other region will start using it. Yes or no? Yes or no, guys?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Facebook application. By the time, so let's say we are in India and we use from our daytime during our daytime. By the time like we stop using it, some other people from some other continent will be using it, right? So those kind of applications, we have to do this soak test for 1 day or, like those applications will be used continuously, right? For 1 day or 2 days or 3 days. For those kind of applications, we have to do this, endurance test for maybe probably 1 day continuously or 2 days or 3 days, right? And what is the main objective? Main objective of this soak test is to identify performance bottlenecks like a memory leak, connection leak, when an application is used continuously for longer duration. So when an application is being used continuously for longer duration, like 16 hours, 8 hours, or 1 day, or 2 days, or 3 days, right? There will be something called memory leak and connection leak. We'll discuss that in detail. What is a memory leak? What is a connection leak? But for now, remember that the main objective of doing soak test is to find out any memory leaks or connection leaks. Okay. I'll explain this. What is a memory leak? What is connection leak? I will explain that in the once we complete scripting, right? Then we will discuss this one.
Sir, I have a question over here. Sir, in this load test, no, sir, for 1 to 2 hours, for example, we give around 50 users and we'll do to testing. For endurance or soak test, how many users we give for long duration, sir? Like,
okay, good question. So soak test or endurance test, we need not do with current user load, normal user load, right? Because throughout the day, there will not be, those many number of users. All the users will not be using the application continuously, isn't it? So we take 75% or 80% of the normal user load for soak test. Praveen, right?
yes, sir.
Okay. So we use generally we apply 75% of the expect normal user load. Load test key, suppose you are testing with 5,000 users, right? For soak test, you need not have to test with 5,000 users, but you can test with 4,000 users. That is enough. 4,000 or 3,500 users is enough. You will take generally 70 to 80% or 75%, somewhere around 70 to 80%.
Okay. Okay.
The next, very good question. In fact, very important question also for interviews. right? And the next type of testing is, see, this is the advantage you get if you learn in a batch. So some people, ask for one-on-one training. I don't know what, that is, so they will not learn anything. They will not learn this much in a one-on-one training, definitely. Agree? So when you have a batch of people, right? So you
Yes, sir.
different questions, you will get different doubts, right? Each one of us will think in a different perspective, isn't it? And that is where you learn well when you have a batch of people, isn't it? So if it is one-on-one training, like trainer will be tending to complete it as soon as possible, complete the training as soon as possible. Yes or no? Right? And also you will not have different people like asking different questions and different doubts will not be clarified. Right? There will be good discussion.
Yes, sir.
Right? Yeah. Now the next type
Sir?
of testing, yeah. Yes.
Sir, you told me the load testing always take 1 to 2 hours. This one is minimum or this will increase?
No, generally it will be 1 to 2 hours based on the user load. Suppose if your user load is in hundreds only, you can do load test for 1 hour enough. 1 hour is enough. If your user load is in hundreds, let's say 400 or 500 or, like that. But if your user load is in 4,000 or 5,000 or 10,000, 20,000, then we will go for 2 hours test. Okay. I'll explain why should we go for 2 hours when we have user load in thousands. I'll explain that. Okay. So I'll explain that. I'll explain a concept called ramp up, user ramp up at steady state and ramp down. At that time, I will explain it. Maybe in the next chart, I'll explain that. Okay. Next 2 slides, I'll explain it. Now, any other questions on this load and soak test? The next type of testing is stress test. So stress test is done by gradual increase of user load until the application breaks. Right? We already discussed yesterday. Like I gave a brief introduction. What is stress test yesterday? Basically, stress test is done by increasing the user load gradually until the application breaks. Until the application breaks means breaking means application starts throwing errors. Right? How can we say that application is breaking? If the application starts throwing errors, response times are high. Initially, response times will be high. After some user load, your application starts throwing errors like 500 internal server error or something, right? So at that point, we call that as a breaking point. We call that user load as a breaking point. And now main purpose of stress testing is to identify an application's breaking point. Means at what user load the application will completely break down, right? That is the purpose of doing this. What is that? This stress test, right? And when do we know that breaking point is attained? Response times increase and error count also increases once the breaking point is attained. Attained means once the breaking point is reached, your response times will increase and error count also increases. Then you can decide that the application breaking point is reached, right? And stress test is something, please follow carefully. Once after this, after my explanation, so we'll have one quick assessment. I will show you some graphs and you have to identify. I'll ask particularly, see, you see some graphs over here, right? In the next slides, you have to identify what type of test each graph represents. Okay. So, and also very important concept for performance testing. Okay.
Sir, one doubt in the previous slide. You told the breaking point will be based on the number of errors coming and the response time. So is there any standard which we are maintaining? How many number of errors and what is the standard response time like that?
Okay. So error percentage can be 1% for any application. Number of errors or error percentage can be 1%. If it is more than that, that is not acceptable. More than 1% of errors is not acceptable. And response times is like we have SLS, right? Response time SLS. Yeah. If your response times are breaching the SLS, then we can say that application reached its maximum capacity.
Got it.
Now the next type of testing is spike test, right? So what is this spike test? Spike test is done. How is this spike test done? Is it is done by sudden increase in user load beyond expected load for shorter durations. Remember this sudden increase in the user load for shorter duration. I'll do one thing. Let me highlight this shorter durations. So how is this spike test done, guys? It is done by sudden increase in user load beyond the expected load for shorter duration. Can you give some examples for this spike test?
Big billion sale.
Okay.
ARCDC application.
Tatkal.
Booking.
Yeah. Tatkal booking during for Tatkal booking for IRCTC application. Right? There will be a sudden increase in the user load for shorter duration, isn't it? From 10 o'clock. See, I think we have two Tatkal windows, right? One at 10 o'clock and the other one at 11 o'clock. What is so when is sleeper class booking? 10 or 11?
Once 11.
11.
11 sleeper class. So 10 o'clock it's AC, right? First class, first AC, second AC, I think that is at 10 o'clock, right? Okay. So normally, like whenever like at 10 o'clock exactly, there will be a sudden increase in the user load. Yes or no? And that use sudden increase, that spike lasts for 10 minutes or 15 minutes. After 10, 15 or 10, 20, it will come to normal gradually, isn't it? Yes or no, guys? The Tatkal tickets will be over as soon as no one will try to book a ticket, Tatkal booking after 10:40 or 10:30, isn't it? By the time all the tickets will be over mostly. If at all there are some users, there will not be a drastic change. Yes or no, guys?
Yes.
Again at 11 o'clock we will have another spike, isn't it? So the spike testing, so for that kind of applications only we have to do spike testing. For these kind of applications, when those applications which will have a sudden increase in user load for shorter duration, right? For those kind of applications, we have to do the spike testing, right? Volume testing, next type of testing is volume testing, not done so frequently. So the volume testing is not done so frequently, but it is done to verify response times when there is huge volume of data in the database, right? And it is also referred to as flood testing. Volume testing is also called as flood testing, right? And volume testing is done to analyze the system performance by increasing the volume of data in the database. What is meant by volume of data? Volume of data means nothing but number of records in the database. We will keep some n number of records, let's say 50,000 records or 1 lakh records in the database, and we do this volume testing, right? So I worked on almost like 30 projects, and in only one project we have done this volume testing. We don't have such requirement in other almost none of the other projects required this, right? When I was working in a banking project, then we have done this volume testing. Got it? So out
Sir,
of
sir, in any of the case, like since we are doing a performance testing, if the application gets failed because of us, like since we applied a more load, what would be the scenario at that time, sir?
what happens? We will simply restart the servers. We will ask the development team to restart the servers.
Again, it will work fine, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
If the server crashes, right? If they restart the servers, then it will come to normal state. Your application works as usual.
Any data loss, anything like that? For example, like there are 10 records which has been created. I mean, 10 policies that has been created initially by some XYZ team, and we did a volume testing. Like we did a stress testing. Again, the server restart. The 10 records would go off, or like what would happen?
Even though there is data loss, nothing to worry because we do testing in a dedicated environment. No other team will be using that.
Okay.
Ideally, we should do testing and performance testing in a dedicated environment. It's a client responsibility to provide that a dedicated environment. Okay. So if they cannot provide, we can't help them. Right?
Okay.
It's our also, it's our first and foremost responsibility to inform that, to educate the client that we need a dedicated test environment. We should not do the testing in production environment or any other environment. they cannot provide, that is their risk.
Okay. Oh, like if the
There
client
will
has
be no data loss, by the way. There will be no data. Why will there be a data loss?
since we are applying more load, that is the reason I asked this question.
No, that's fine. So even though you apply it to more load, response times may increase and error count may increase. Error count increases, but that doesn't result in a data loss.
Okay. And what are the consequences of not having a dedicated environment, sir? What would be the problems we may see?
Okay, so we will not. So if we don't have a dedicated environment, so that is not a proper testing, proper performance testing.
Okay.
You should have an exact replica of production. Your test environment should be an exact replica of production. First thing.
Okay.
If it is not, then we are not doing a proper performance testing, right? And also, if your server crashes, if your any other team, let's say for example, in my current project, we don't have a dedicated environment for performance testing. So we are doing stage environment. In stage environment only, functional testing is also doing the testing. So if during our performance testing, if the environment crashes, right, so the testing will be stopped. That is a simple consequence, right?
Yes, sir.
Or the whole team gets blocked there till someone restarts the servers or someone restores the application.
Okay.
No other testing can be done, right? So if the environment is
entire team would get blocked. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Next type of testing is scalability testing. So scalability testing is performed to identify if the application is capable to scale up. Scale up means whether the application can handle more than expected load, right? What is the load that it can support, right? So that is scalability testing. To find out that we do this scalability testing. And failover testing I explained yesterday. Failover testing is to, I will repeat it, any new participants, guys, those who did not attend yesterday, Divya, other than Divya?
Yeah, from myself, Nagaraj also.
Okay. Okay, Nagaraj, is this your first session or you missed yesterday's session?
Yesterday session only.
Okay. Did you go through the recording? You got the link to the recorded session?
No, I haven't.
Okay. So I explained these only. Okay, nothing to worry. I explained these only in the previous session. Yeah. So, but I explained this failure testing. So what is failure testing? As we discussed yesterday. Failure testing is something like, we have an inverter at home, right? If you don't want a power interruption, we'll go for a backup, power backup, like an inverter or something, isn't it? So how do we do, how do we do this failure testing? First of all, what is failure testing is? It is used to verify the system's ability, right? System's ability to continue day-to-day operations while the processing part is transferred to a backup environment, right? So every application, every software application will have a backup environment, one main environment and one backup environment. So what is the use of that? What is the purpose of having a backup environment? Right? Let's say, for example, I'll take some example over here. So of course, right now we have, I'll take this SBI example. Okay. State Bank of India has its headquarters in Mumbai, right? State Bank of India is having its headquarters in Mumbai. So all their, servers used to be there in Mumbai head office, right? Previously, of course, right now everyone moved to cloud, right? So, but previously, like all their servers, all their net banking servers used to be in Mumbai. Now, last year or before last year, we had floods in Mumbai, right? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So when we had floods, right? So there is continuous power interruption. So even though you have a backup, it will work for 1 day or 2 days, isn't it? Even though you have inverter at home, it will come for a limited period of time, isn't it? Yes or no, guys? If you have continuous, you have power for 1 week or 2 weeks, will the inverter will be able to support you? No, right? No, right? So it depends on the usage, of course, right? So every application will have a main environment and a backup environment. Okay, someone joined with the name as Paddu. Who is this? Okay. Now, what is the purpose of having a backup environment? Suppose your main environment is down for some reason, when there is a natural calamity like earthquake or something, or there are, in Mumbai we had floods last year, isn't it? Last year or before last year, and the whole normal life got disrupted. Yes or no, guys? Or else there is a organization running in Vizag, and Vizag we had Hudud Tufan, right? So there is no power, there is no internet. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let's say your main environment is in Vizag, or your main environment is in Japan, and there is an earthquake in Japan, or in US we have something called hurricanes, right? So whenever we have such natural calamities, right? So this backup environment will be located generally in some other city. For software applications, this backup environment will be located in some other city, so that if the main environment is down for some reason, the business continues as usual, right? So that there is a concept called continuity of business. So if the business should go as usual, right? Even though like we had floods in Mumbai, SBI net banking system is available, right? For the rest of the country. Maybe they are not using, Mumbai people are not using because they're not having internet and power. But rest of country is working fine, right? Should work fine, right? So they will have a backup environment in some other city, right? So now, how is this failover testing done is, hey, someone joined with display name as, let me stop recording. You understood, right, guys? So every application will have a main environment and a backup environment. Is it clear, guys? Understood or no? That means you will have the same application running on different servers in some other city. Here in this case. Understood, guys? Guys, able to follow or no?
Sir.
Right? So just like how we do, once we get the inverter installed, what do we do? Someone explained it yesterday. What do we do like before the technician, or once the technician installs the inverter and give the connections, electrical connections, what does he do to test that, whether inverter is working fine or not?
Turn off the mains.
Right. So he'll simply turn off the mains power and see whether the backup connections are working on that inverter or not, isn't it? That each fan and light in each room is working on the inverter or not. Yes or no, guys? So here in the same way, what do we do in failover testing is, we'll start the load test. After starting load test, after some time, after 15 minutes or 20 minutes, we'll bring down the main servers. We'll shut down the main servers and see whether, the backup servers are working or not. Right? Again, after some time, we'll turn on the main servers, right? Once the main servers are turned on, right? Now the user load should go to the main environment. Just like in our inverter example. Suppose, once we turn off the mains power, whatever electrical points given on the inverter should work on the inverter, right? And once the mains power is restored, right? Again, they should take power from the mains, right? Understood or no? They should not continue on the inverter, right? Once the mains power is on.
Yes, Pawan.
Right? In the same way here also, what do we do is, so we will
Sir, how is this taken care, sir? Switching back from the old server to new server, it will be taken care by the other teams, right? Who are supporting the PTT.
Good question. Yeah, good question. So developers will also be involved here. Okay. So developers are, there will be a separate team for your server team will be there. Network team will be there. So that team also will get involved here in the testing. Good question. So got it, right? So some other team also will get involved, either your development team or your network team. If it is a big project, right? So you will have a separate server team who manage the servers. So they will also get involved. Okay. So this is how we do this failover testing, right? So this is about these different types of testing this in detail, right? So we discussed load test, soak test. Load test is very important one. I didn't highlight this. soak test and stress test. I will keep normal. Okay. So load test and soak test are mandatory tests for any project, right? And other types of test based on the requirement, based on the application, we will decide whether we have to do that type of testing or not, right? But these two are mandatory types of performance testing: load test and soak test. Okay. So any questions now in these topics, today's topics? Any other questions?
Sir, based on the project requirement, so generally, mainly all the projects in the majority basis will be doing the load testing and failover testing, sir.
Load testing and soak testing.
Soak testing, okay. Soak testing. So the remaining things, when it is required, only we are going to do based on the requirement. So
Right.
generally, yeah, in interview, what we need to cover basically, if they ask what type of what you have done in the real time, then what we have to answer.
You can tell that we are doing load testing and soak testing, but I know I know other types of testing also, like stress and spike. You can explain about them theoretically. That you are not doing that, but you know, like when for which applications require other types of testing, right? For example, stress testing or spike testing is required for some kind of applications only, isn't it? So you can tell that, we are doing in our project, we are doing load and soak testing, but there are other types of testing as well. Based on the requirement, we will do that. Or else you can say that in one of my project, I did a spike testing also. Or in one of my project, I did a stress testing also. One of my previous projects. So you can tell him that you are keeping experience.
Thank you.
Yeah, Pawan, if the interviewer asks the questions like, what are the difficulties you found in your current project means, what is the answer for that?
What are the issues you found out in your current project? It's too early to discuss that. Okay, we'll discuss that. Praveen, right? So I think you are joining that other batch also. There we will discuss that.
It's Rajkumar, not Ravi.
Rajkumar. Okay.
Yeah, Pawan, I have one question. So how many ways we can stress the application, like stress testing?
In how many ways we can stress the application?
Yes.
We can increase the user load or decrease the think times.
Yeah, okay.
We can decrease when we decrease think times also, the application will be subjected to more user load, right?
Yes. So what about end user? It is also.
But that is not a proper stress test. We should not decrease the think times.
Yeah, okay. So only the two ways, so increasing the number of users or reducing the think and pacing time, yes, right?
Yeah, you mentioned one more, right? Rendezvous point.
So rendezvous point is the right answer, yeah?
Rendezvous point also. Rendezvous point, is it a stress test? It's not a stress test actually. Yeah, okay. Rendezvous point, we can say that it is a spike testing. It falls under spike testing. So we can say, and spike testing is a subset of stress testing.
Okay.
So spike testing can be considered as a subset of stress testing. Yes. So in what ways, in how many ways we can do stress testing? Yes, that also falls under rendezvous point. Also falls under the stress testing.
Okay. So only the increasing number of users or reducing think and pacing time, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Shall we move to the graphs now? So this is one of the, in interviews, they will ask you to draw the graphs. They will not draw the graph and ask you to identify. However, as you are beginners, right? Most of you are beginners. So I am showing you some graphs and you need to identify what type of test is this. So before that, let me explain few things. Okay, let me explain this graph before you attempt it. So observe here, this is called as, see, this is called as x-axis, right? This is called as x-axis. And on x-axis, we are representing the test duration. Understand, let me first explain the graph, right? On the x-axis, we are representing the test duration. And on y-axis, we are representing the user load, right? This is y-axis. This vertical one is y-axis, on which we are representing virtual users or user load. Okay. And let me explain this one also. Let me explain this graph. So what are we doing here actually is we are actually increasing the user load gradually, right? We are starting with the, hold on. We are gradually increasing the user load from 0 to, let's say, some 5,000 or 10,000. And this is called as ramp up. This is called as ramp up. Means increasing the users, starting the user load or starting the virtual users gradually. This is called as a ramp up period. And this is called as steady state, right? This is called as steady state. If you observe here, from here to here, it is the user load is same. But in between, there are the user load increased, right? For some duration. You got it, right? Now, what type of test is this?
Spike testing.
Spike testing, right? So that is what we discussed here, right? So spike testing is done by, for applications which, which will have sudden increase in the user load for shorter duration, right? So this example best represents, IRCTC application, right? Tatkal booking during IRCTC. Let's say, for example, this is the normal user load, this straight line, right? This line, of course, there are in between, there are sudden spike, but this line represents, let's say, normal user load. And at 10 o'clock, there is one spike, and 11 o'clock, there is one spike, right? So this graph best resembles that, isn't it? But in general, this graph represents a spike testing. Understood, guys?
Yes,
guys, in interviews, they will ask you to draw the graphs. That is why I explained this. You have to first draw x-axis and y-axis, and you have to mention what you are representing on x-axis. On x-axis, you will always represent the test duration. Okay. Test duration is always represented on x-axis, this horizontal line. Okay. On y-axis, this differs from graph to graph, it differs. Here we are representing the user load. Right? And is this clear, guys? This graph represents a spike test. Now, what is this next type of test? What type of test is this?
Load test.
Okay. So this graph best represents a load test. Again, we are representing on x-axis, we are representing test duration. And on y-axis, we are representing virtual users. Right? And what is this called as? This is called as
a ramp up period.
Ramp up period. This is called as steady state. Right? Steady state means there is no change in the user load. From here to here, there is no change in the user load. That period is called as steady state period. Okay. And this is called as
ramp down.
Ramp down. And if you observe here, here it is mentioned as 1H, means 1 hour.
1 hour,
right?
yes.
Right. So this graph best represents a
load test.
Load test. Right. And now what type of test is the next one? What type of test is this one?
Endurance test.
So
no.
Stress testing.
Stress testing.
Right. So if you remember, stress testing is done by gradual increase in the user load. Just now we discussed.
Yes.
Right? So stress testing is something which we do with gradual increase of user load until the application breaks. Right? So here we are gradually, see, let me explain this graph. So this is ramp up. From here to here, there is steady state. Again, we are ramping up the users. Again, maintaining some steady state. Again, we are increasing users. Again, maintaining some steady state. So we gradually increase the user load till the application breaks. And what is the objective of doing this test testing?
Identify the breakpoint.
To identify the breaking point of the application, right? What is the maximum user load that the application supports before breaking? And how do you identify that an application reached its breaking point?
Errors and response time.
Application getting
While response time is high, and is there any errors are occurring?
Right. Error rate is high and response times are high, then we can conclude that application has reached its breaking point. Right? Now, shall we move to the next graph? What type of test is this one?
Endurance test.
Endurance test or soak test?
Soak or endurance test. Because you see the duration, so it resembles a load test, but Duration is mentioned as 5 hours, right? Approximately. That is a tilde symbol represents approximate. See, this is read as tilde. You see, tilde symbol, right?
Yes.
Tilde symbol on keyboard, right? So that this one. Let me highlight this one, right? That represents approximate. That means approximate. If someone is using the tilde symbol, that means approximate. Is it visible here clearly, or yeah, here it is. Got it? That is read as tilde, TILDE. Okay. So that means approximately, it's mentioned here that the duration is approximately 5 hours. Okay. So this graph best represents a
SOAK endurance.
SOAK endurance test. Right. Perfect. Now, what does this graph represent? Observe here, till now, all the graphs have virtual user load on the y-axis, number of users on the y-axis. Now, observe here, there is a difference. Observe the difference here. On x-axis, we have test duration only, whereas on the y-axis, we have data quantity. Data quantity means number of records. And now this graph best represents a
volume test.
Volume test, right? So remember, in interviews, like they will ask you, they will not draw the graph. They will ask you to draw the graph for, let's say they may ask you like, what are the different types of performance testing? You told all the different types of performance testing. Then they may ask you, can you draw a graph, right? So that will be helpful. Like these graphs will be helpful, right? Now you should be able to draw the graph and show them for each type of test, right? So I'll stop it here for today. Tomorrow we'll discuss what is the importance of performance testing. What are the prerequisites for performance testing, right? And rest of the concepts. Yeah.
Yeah, Pawan, what is the end-to-end process of performance testing? Like, so మన ప్రాజెక్ట్ వచ్చినప్పటి నుంచి మనం ఏం తీసుకుంటాం, తర్వాత ప్రాజెక్ట్ సైన్ ఆఫ్ అయిన తర్వాత మనం ఏం సబ్మిట్ చేస్తాం?
Yeah. I'll explain that in the performance testing life cycle.
Yeah, okay.
I'll explain that in the performance testing life cycle. And in each stage, what are the deliverables, right? One more interview question is, what are the deliverables in each phase?
Okay, yeah.
Right? So this is the performance testing life cycle. Let me show you as you brought it up. So this is the performance testing life cycle. It starts with RFA and RFP and ends with the final report. So, and this is the complete life cycle. Now, in each stage, we will have some deliverables. We will use or deliver something to the client. For example, in the requirement, in this test plan phase, we will prepare a test plan and share it to the client. In scripting phase, we have to give the scripts to the client. Once the project is over or once we are done with scripting, we need to share the scripts to the client here. So in each phase, we have some deliverables also. I'll explain that in performance testing life cycle when I cover this one.
Thank you.
Okay, so maybe in the next 1 or 2 sessions, we will have that. Once we complete this importance of performance testing and prerequisites, right? Then I will explain application architecture diagram. I think I already explained this. Did I explain this architecture diagram in this batch? No. Okay. So once I explain that, then we will discuss what is performance testing life cycle. And what is requirement gathering? How do you collect the requirements? What are the NFR requirements we need to gather? Right. So we'll have one separate session on this requirement gathering only. And I will share some requirement gathering templates as well. Okay, I have some training handouts that I need to give to you. So I will share those requirement gathering. See, this is the requirement gathering questionnaire, which I will share it to you. You can use it in your project. Okay. So this is the requirement gathering document. In that way, we have
document
training handouts. Yeah, I will share the PPT as well. Yes. Let me pause the recording. Any queries before we close the session for today? Before pausing the recording?
The ramp up time.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, sir. I was asking, when we are using the ramp up time in the stress or load testing, will that be included in the 1 hour or 2 hours or run?
Yes, that ramp up and ramp down also will be part of that 2 hours or 1 hour load test.
So when we are testing an application from the client side, we will only know the SLA or the response time. How will we decide how much user will be attending?
How much?
How much user will be there to perform this load test or something like that? So
how do we know the user load?
Yes.
Okay. So that information also will be collected as part of requirement gathering itself. So client will have that information.
Okay.
Client will have that information. How many users will be using their application? They are the right person to answer that, right?
Okay. So let's say the client says that there will be 2 lakhs of users. So is it possible to run all these 2 lakhs of users through load runner or JMeter, this type of environment?
Yes, we can run 2 lakhs or 5 lakh user load test also with load runner. JMeter not possible. With JMeter we cannot run like two. I don't think like we can run. And moreover, some application which is having 2 lakh users, definitely they will go for a licensed tool only. They will not go for free tools, right?
Okay.
So and yes, so load runner is capable of doing the load test up to 5 lakh users, 10 lakh users. That's possible.
Okay.
With load runner and any other commercial tools like NeoLoad. NeoLoad is another licensed tool. Right? So this commercial tool supports lakhs of users. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Sir, one query on the requirements for the performance testing. Sir, who will be attending those meetings?
Okay. Who will be correcting the requirements?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So more generally, like your project lead or team lead will be correcting the requirements, and the initial calls they will be involved. In some projects, based on your organization, so whole team may get involved. But one person will be acting as a POC basically, point of contact from the performance testing team. So he will be collecting the requirements. So generally, like your team lead or project lead will be acting as a POC. Everyone will not interact directly with the client, right? So someone from one of your team member will be acting as a point of contact, single point of contact. We call them as POC, a single point of contact. So they will be collecting the requirements and they will be interacting with the client and they will be leading the meetings.
Okay.
Single point of contact, right? One of the team member will be acting as single point of contact. Okay. They will be collecting the requirements. They will be sending email communication and all. They will be doing that. Okay. But whenever we have team meetings, the whole team gets to join the meeting. They will join the meeting. And we'll have internal daily stand-up calls. Every team member should join and everyone should, speak out, right? So we'll have daily stand-up calls. These are internal within the project. Means you and your manager will have a connect every day. For example, in our project, we have a daily stand-up call at around 10:45 or 11, right? So we have different stand-up calls. So in that way, like, or sometimes in some projects, you'll have that stand-up call, daily stand-up call in the evening. So in stand-up calls, your manager will interact with you, like what are you to know what are you working on, any blockers, what did you achieve today, and what are you planning for tomorrow, right? Or else if you have a morning stand-up call, we'll discuss like what did we do yesterday and what are we going to do today.
Okay.
Right? So everyone everyone should be technically sound. Everyone should speak out in that meetings. Got it? So yeah, let me pass recording. I want to discuss a few things. Please go through this recording once. So here I made one video on communication tips and do's and don'ts with international IT clients. Right? International, not only international IT clients, but even with domestic clients also. So I made a video in which I covered some. Okay, let me show that PPT as well, so that you'll get an idea what is there in that PPT, in that recording, that video. So please go through this. Anyways, right now you don't have any assignments and all, scripting assignment and all, right? So please go through that video where I covered different concepts like what is the correct usage of a word, right? And hold on, I will use some examples. So this is you should use the client date format, first thing, right? So this is the US date format. So in US, they use this format. First, they mention month and date and year. Whenever you are preparing a report, right, you should follow this format. For a US client, you should follow this format. In India, we follow this one. We first mention date, month, and then year, isn't it? So this is, you should use appropriate date format. You should use appropriate punctuation, right? And you should use, appropriate words. So for example, this should be read as tier, N tier, okay? Not tire, right? It should not be pronounced as tire. It should be pronounced as tier, right? So in that way, I listed out some terminology or some do's and don'ts, right? So please go through this. Do not say sir or do not call madam, right? So please, I made a video on this. I explained all these concepts in that video. So I'll share that in the WhatsApp group. Please go through that recorded session. Okay. And you have to practice. See, how I used to do is, like, whenever I am attending interview as a fresher, whenever I am alone, I used to practice something. I used to practice like what questions they will ask and how should I answer. Right? I used to do in that way when I was as a fresher guest. Okay. At that time, I was very reserved and I used to speak only if someone asked me something. Right? So everyone will have that. Everyone will have that, that phase at some or other time. So you should, gradually improve it. It comes with practice. It comes with confidence. Right? So please go through this. I'll share this video in the WhatsApp group, in our WhatsApp group. So please go through that once. I'll stop it here, guys, for today.
Sir, are you available now, sir? Or?
Yeah, Murli, right?
Praveen, sir.
Praveen, okay. Yeah, Praveen.
Okay.
Let me pass recording.